You are a very early mover in the AI. I was one of the people that discovered transformer architecture. That led to a big discovery that by just scaling up data, you get model performance better. What do you think of the fundamental investor career in the future? I can probably replace human investor like the Soros, Dalio, at least Cassie Wood, right?
Bill's son is a Stanford Math PhD and visionary AI scientist. He helped invent the architecture powering today's AI revolution at Google Brain. He's managed over $1 billion on Wall Street using AI, and now leads PinAI and Generative Alpha on a mission to automate finance and empower super intelligent personal assistants. From quantum math to trading floors, Bill's son is shaping the future of technology.
In Millennium, I was managing a mid-frequency equity book, like $1 billion and 3,000 stocks. When I invest my own money, I was 500 to 600% up in less than a year. Do not have any human analysts working for me. Algo trading is all about automate Wall Street traders. Now AI is essentially open 1,000 of algo trading level opportunity. Hello and welcome to Build It Up, where AI meets crypto, technology meets humanity, and East meets West. I'm Bill. Subscribe now and be part of the conversation. My guest today is Bill Sun, the co-founder and chief scientist at PinAI. He has a Stanford Math PhD and has managed billions on Wall Street using AI-driven trading strategy. Bill also did early AI research at Google Brain and Deep AI and helped found AI Plus Club and AGI House. He's the founder of Generative Alpha, building AI solution for business. Great to have you here, Bill. Hey, thanks so much for inviting. Awesome. It's a good time to catch you up when I was in Stanford, and yeah, it's good to have you here. You are a very early mover in the AI, and I think you are probably one of the very few first math PhD getting into the LLM model, right? Could you introduce a little bit about your background, how you started your AI journey? Yeah, totally. I was a Stanford Math PhD 2014. And before that, I was in Peking Math, and I started my, AI side research since 2012 when I was working with my undergrad research advisor, who is also in Princeton. And he is more like mathematical physicist. We were basically trying to use the quantum, like a field theory and all those things to understand the early days of machine learning. And we saw basically Hinton get the ImageNet breakthrough with convolutional neural net and GPU, and we were pretty excited, and we're trying to use kind of probabilistic theory and the quantum field theory and all those kind of abstract maths, kind of approximating like a deep learning field. That's how I entered the field, and slowly I work in more and more applied field, and went from like a pure mathematician to, okay, I don't think I can prove that much theorem about deep learning. Deep learning just moves so fast. Let me do empirical research. And in 2016, I was pretty lucky to be in Google Brain, now called Google DeepMind, and I was one of the few early people that discovered transformer architecture. The paper is published in 2017. This paper, Attention is All You Need, but the actual discovery is happening in 2016 summer, where the biggest discovery come from Ashish, from like getting basically self-attention to replace all the old-fashioned sequence model like bidirectional LSTM in like machine translation. And my contribution is I'm the first person who got the self-attention architecture work on question answering. And also I discovered that instead of like modifying model architecture, which is what people do all day, I literally just need to copy exactly what worked on machine translation, swap the data set to question answering, and treat like say the question and the context at a very long language and treat the answer at a very short language, and just do like a sequence model. And in the meantime, all you need to do to increase performance is not to tweak model, but to scale up data. I actually used a lot of Google search internal data to scale up as more like a cheating, right? Since that's not a fair competition to like a public academic benchmark by like utilizing Google search user data. Yeah, but that led to a big discovery that I realized, okay, by just scaling up data, you get model performance better. Of course, it also led me to not be able to write. That part experiment cannot go to the paper because it also utilized the Google internal user data. Yeah. So it's both that good and bad. I discovered something interesting, but also I cannot really like publish it together I cannot sneak my experiment into the attention. And later I decided to work on even more applied field since I feel, okay, it's kind of hopeless to actually use mathematical proof to understand what's the fundamental principle behind deep learning. I still have the dream, but I was like, okay, let me find the applied field. And I choose more like a generic like a finance, or you'd say like crypto finance type of field. I played in Tradify, in Millennium as a portfolio manager for 3 years. I played in Citadel in Point72. I also did a lot of like crypto research on like early Bitcoin research.
So those are all the holy grail for all the finance career guys. And I know you manage billions-dollar balance sheet over there, right? So how do you deploy the AI model, when you are trading in Millennium and Citadel, etc.?
Yeah. So in Millennium, I was managing a mid-frequency equity book where it's like $1 billion and it's like long short neutral. So in reality, I should have hold $0, right? It's more like I have a big risk budget.
Should be a neutral.
Yeah. Every day I pretty much hold like 3,000 stocks. Half of it roughly is long, half of it roughly is short. And basically we use machine learning models to predict what's gonna go up in this 3,000 dimensional vector. Like, okay, what's gonna go up tomorrow, what's gonna go down tomorrow, and let's use portfolio optimization, use like reinforcement learning to turn all this like machine learning prediction into actual trade positions every day. That's the type of work I've been doing. And to get those machine learning model work, we use a lot of like order book data. We use a lot of like alternative data, fundamental data, a lot of this like structured data in the early days. And that is the reason that kind of made me think, okay, a lot of the data we use is very structured, and it's more like I bought around 1,000 data set from different like financial data vendors for this like early machine learning stuff. But when I look at my peers that work in Millennium as like a fundamental or discretionary portfolio manager who bet on like 10 stocks, people who are specializing in semiconductor, they sometimes have higher return. I clearly have a higher Sharpe ratio of 3.
You think the fundamental player today still have the advantage as compared to you AI guys?
In general, I think it's not AI guy. It's more like the more diversified you are, in general, you have less risk, but also your return is kind of tamed.
Yeah, that's true.
Over the last year, when I invest my own money, I was like 500 to 600% up in less than a year. No leverage, like a retirement account just for fun, right? So it's like when I invest my own money, I can be quite concentrated on the highest conviction bet. The highest conviction bet normally lead to higher return, but of course it will lead to bigger drawdown. By like holding 3,000 stocks, you hold a bunch of diversified uncertainty, so that in the end, your Sharpe ratio can get like higher. Your drawdown is more controlled. You will not blow up, but sometimes you can have like a 20% drawdown if you hold one stock.
That's true, especially if you hold some very high potential growth stock, and the potential drawdown and volatility would be also very high. So what do you think of the fundamental investor career in the future? Do you think they will be eaten by AI, or they will still be over there? Like the long-only slow investor concentrate on some high convicted stocks, those type of traditional behavior?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. When I left Millennium, that's when I basically saw InstructGPT, and they pondered me to think this question. Okay, now in my old team, I have 20 like research analysts, or I would say quant researcher, or in general, they are analysts, or they are people who do what PM want them to do, right? I realized, okay, AI can pretty much automate this 20 people, especially during COVID, right? These people are like talking to me on Slack or Zoom. It's pretty easy to imagine, okay, all of them can be replaced by AI. So that's
Yes.
one of the inspiration for me to start my company, Generative Alpha, where I try to say, okay, on the less successful outcome, if I figure out how to build an AI analyst, I can probably replace a lot of like Wall Street kind of entry level work to have like
Yes.
AI follow that. And if I really get really lucky and discover something really nuanced, I might be able to unlock how to replace the top human investor like the Soros, like the Ray Dalio, And yeah, at least even like a Cassie Wood, right? Let's not be too ambitious. Like I think if we can like replace a Cassie Wood, it's already pretty good achievement of AI. I think by today, I'm pretty happy to say that the technology we build is pretty solid. Can replace pretty much like a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year junior analyst coming out of college with a good like math training, coding training, plus like a basic economics training, finance training. They can read a lot of like articles. They can summarize a lot of things. They can do Excel. So they can like do basic Python coding. All of that we have pretty much automated up all those. So in terms of like within finance, we are on pretty good steps towards having like a 1 to 0 analyst in a small fund with 1 PM. For example, when I invest now, I'm just like 1 PM plus a bunch of AI. I do not have any human analyst working for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and that come to the idea that why you initiate the Gen Alpha, right? So could you talk about what's the product look like for Gen Alpha and what kind of traditional function you want to replace?
Yeah, Gen Alpha's product actually went through multiple generation iteration. The first product we build is pretty much like a more powerful ChatGPT deep research in 2023. Of course, it's not as good as today's ChatGPT deep research because I do not have enough money to train, let's say, reinforcement learning in real. I'm just like basic having multiple large language model debate and really like talk about all the possible bullish views, bearish views, and how to understand the different news sources and how to understand different like broker reports, expert call transcripts, like earning call conference stuff like this. That's the earliest day product. We have capability to understand a lot of like unstructured data, like PDFs, graphs, Excels, and turn them into this like financial analyst level summary to in the end give you very useful kind of ticker recommendation to help you find the trading opportunities. That's pretty much from like 2023 to mid 2024 what I was doing. And then I decided to actually use the tool to basically help myself rather than build up a giant sales team to sell it. Since I realized the cost of building software is pretty much going to zero as the model gets better and better. But the cost of building a big operational sales team to sell to Wall Street is still gigantic. And I'm not super interested in building up a giant sales team per se. To me, it's much easier to basically go to market with LPs and then go to market potentially with like retail investors who invest with me. Pretty much that's the direction that I feel like suits my capability a little bit better. So I decided to go that direction, and from there I find my current co-founder in Gen Alpha, who I mean we have known each other for 9 years, but it's like we were seriously talking about merging our business together, and he's trading a pretty significant chunk HFT every year, and it's like getting very stable yield, like a 20-30% APY with sharp 22. Like it's kind of skyrocket high sharp. It's like a very steady strategy. And we're like, okay, let's merge my equity stuff with his crypto high frequency, super high sharp stuff together. And let's put all the resource into essentially a yield generation stablecoin so that everyone can come and instead of invest in a fund that you need to be a credit investor, you need to do that. We just make it as simple as you put money into a stablecoin and the stablecoin is creating yield for you. We call it AIUSD for two reasons. First, AI is making money for you, where AI creating algo strategies to like make money for you. Of course, now it's still like AI for 90%, but like still 10% human discretion, human like PM strategy developers like prompt and insights. But it's pretty much like AI doing all the like actual development work and all the actual analyst work. And the other side is we also want this money to be pretty much like a vibe trading tool. When you put your money here, instead of this is like a USDC that you need to put it into your MetaMask and do some trade by like signing 100 different like signatures and move money around. We want this to be more like a unified account and give you the experience of like no matter whether you want to buy like a tokenized NVIDIA or Solana, or if you want to buy RWA on Ethereum or some layer 2 on Ethereum on BSC, or if you want to like trade inside Binance CEX as long as you have a KYC account. We wanted to give you the unified feeling that you can just prompt to trade, say, hey, like copy this smart wallet address. If it trades and the coin goes up more than 2%, then buy $1 million for me. Or like, okay, buy $10 million of Trump coin for me over the next 2 hours, but use iceberg order style saying in AMM. If you can give this kind of like instructions to this AIUSD and it can essentially trade for you as it's a money, but it's also an agent that can execute your trades.
Sounds like you are planning to provide both a financial product generating the alpha return, but also you are planning to provide a AI-enabled tooling. Is this understanding correct?
Yes, yes. First of all, we are trying to generate yield via this stablecoin. And we also want this stablecoin to be more like an abstract stablecoin. That in the early days, it feels more like you put your money into Binance Earn plus algo trading account inside of Binance, where you just telling your like HFT algo trader, this is what I want traded for me. And basically the money has a like HFT algo execution team behind it that are AI. In the old days, it's more like how you voice trade like those execution banks, right? If you are like a human PM in buy side and you tell people on Bloomberg chat, okay, buy me yeah, like 100 million of this, find me a counterparty, try to hide my trace. That's like the classical Wall Street. Essentially, we automate that experience and make it all packed into one like a stable coin that is more programmable agent.
Gotcha. Amazing. And on top of that, I understand you are also the founder for PinAI, right? So what's the relationship between PinAI and Gen Alpha?
So PinAI is kind of inspired by my first journey in building the kind of like analyst style deep research, right? So apparently at that day, ChatGPT is not having very strong search capability. So there is a period when you ask ChatGPT since it does not search the internet, and everyone is building very hard on like who can provide the best AI search experience. And I was basically trying to build the better financial version, but in the meantime, looking very closely into the consumer version of how to build this like AI search. And the one example I look at is Perplexity. Right? Perplexity is like growing very fast, and they were like basically like more wrapper product. Behind the door, it's still like a vanilla language model, but they do very well UI, UX, and they do a lot of very good like speed optimization. And it makes me realize, okay, it actually is super valuable even if you do not have model, if you do not have like a very deep technology, but if you have essentially the user habit and the touch surface to consumer user, your business will be very valuable. So I come up with this thought that what if we build the most personalized AI that knows you really, really well? Then you would want to talk to that AI, even if it might not be the smartest. It will be basically the most loyal one to you, and you will want to guide that AI to like do things, kind of like your EA or your like chief of staff. Normally, your chief of staff is not the smartest people on your team, right? But the chief of staff can help you like basically dispatch your orders to like your other like VP or your other workers. And I think there is this unique position that wins users trust, and I could constantly collect and accumulate users preference, habits, and memory to the point that eventually like it becomes an integrated part of you, as your like life has so much of your memory or digital footprint that it knows you so well. Sometimes it even advise you on things you need to do, like oh, your wife is about to have a birthday, don't forget, I already prepared this 5 gift options for you. Do you want to buy this? Or like you have this like 3 coins in this wallet that you haven't opened for the last 2 years, but recently this coin is pumping. Do you want to sell at the top? It's like it can help you do a lot of these tasks. That's kind of the inspiration of PinAI. That is more like about personalization and loyalty. And with personalization and loyalty, we also have this like a point system that basically encourage people to do social kind of inviting of all the other people to participate, to have some kind of like a growth hack, but eventually a social network effect. Okay, if your personal assistant tied to your friend's personal assistant, then they can coordinate on things, on trips, on like eating out together, even like group pumping a meme coin. Those are like a pretty intimate experience that I want to curate. So I use a lot of this point system plus social approach to grow the product. So far, it has 3 million users, and we paid literally $0. So no marketing channel. We haven't paid any KOL, and yeah, like it just grows super organically to 3 million. And the pretty much I think the first few hundred K users just went through extremely fast exponential growth.
That's amazing. So basically, Gen Alpha is going to be the next generation hedge fund, but also the financial tooling. But PinAI is going to be a very tailor-made AI who understand you better than anyone else.
We want to be on the position that is more intimate with your and you use it as basically your input method, your interface between like a human and a machine, right? Today the interface pretty much still you need to like open ChatGPT and type. Every good consumer product is trying to figure out replace that, yeah. And we are also thinking, okay, if we have enough of your personal information, first of all, if you still have something in your cortex like EA cannot predict, right? That those things you will tell your AI through like basically voice. You'll give like your AI voice instructions, and your AI will basically amplify a very simple short thing like, okay, I'm hungry, to okay, normally at lunch you will order from this 5 restaurant and you want the food to arrive within 20 minutes. This is your address. Your budget is normally like say $40 to $60. These are like a bunch of habits that your AI can fill for you. In the long run, we hope the AI is so smart that it can almost predict what you want to do and read your mind, to the point that it becomes your personal memory or digital avatar that like could take away a lot of the boring part of decisions in your life, so you can focus on the more interesting stuff.
It's very exciting to see all those innovations happening, but also I have a concern, if all those innovations delivered in next few years, and then, what's next for our kids? Let's pivot gear a little bit. If your kid today is 18 years old, and which college major would you suggest them to pick? Still computer science, or you might think, it is too late?
I think this is the hardest question of today. My wife
Yeah.
works at OpenAI as a research scientist. So actually, our baby is about to reach like a 2-year-old, and she's born in this house, like AGI house. So a lot of our friends
Yes.
joke, say the baby is the first AGI baby. Yeah, where we were just talking, okay, with the speed where we see the data center intelligence, like OpenAI or like Anthropic or like Gemini's like model increase. If you think from first principle, they are pretty much like a silicon intelligence that are locked in data center. They don't have body yet, right? But they learn much faster, and there are humongous amount of money trying to pour into basically educating them, much bigger than educating even like the old emperor of like any like biggest countries. They grow in the speed that they like follow scaling law, and yeah, because they need like electricity and all that, right? So I think they fundamentally be in some abstract sense a new species. And when my kid grow to I think 80-year-old, I would predict it's living in the world where a human and this digital super intelligence will co-live. This digital super intelligence in next let's say 16 years will definitely go beyond the co-pilot. And I would predict my kid will not be able to trade better than this intelligence, even on the most
Yeah.
human form of trade, like no matter it's Warren Buffett format or the Soros format. I think it's like pretty much AI will get better than human. And even on art is something that is more like subjective, so human might still have presence, right? I think in terms of college major, I first have a big challenge point that I suspect there will be this well-formed like Chinese school style college major anymore. Stanford already shows that every single, at least half of Stanford student is at least among the two major, one of the double major is CS. To my experience, every ambitious Stanford kid that at least learn like STEM is half like a CS major.
But this is as of now, right? Do you think, the best student is still going to have a double major in computer science in next 16 years?
I think computer science and math are still pretty fundamental, and even physics. These things are the hard science that humans have developed that actually allow us to build things that work, right?
Instead of let AI to do so?
I mean, if you want to co-live in a world where you can still contribute to the knowledge boundary of the whole intelligence species, you need to understand the first principle behind how these things are made. If you give away all this capability of like understanding and the creation to AI, then you basically give up yourself, and you will be like a very boring people that you happen to just have a. It's more like a trust baby, right? If you're a trust baby, your parents made so much money that you just need to learn arts and enjoy life, but you don't understand how the money is made. In like a 10 generation, you will no longer control the money in most likely case. I think human as a whole is kind of the lucky trust baby that we inherit in entire Earth. We have all the like great things that at our disposal. We control physical world very tightly. All the nuclear plants is owned by human. We are still like own all the factory that can build this like Optimus or whatever robotic body, right? So I predict when my kid grow up, it's hopefully still the case that humans still control all those things, and we own much more than AI. But in the meantime, if you give away your capability to innovate to AI, I think it's very bad. So I will probably let my kid do whatever she wants, but fully understand all the math, physics, and the computer science principle, and potentially even like a biology principle if biology evolved to a more fast iteration science that you can like do wet lab in let's say like a few day time rather than a few years of PhD time, then I think those are the hard science that actually change the world, and she should still understand it. And then probably entrepreneurship. I don't think entrepreneurship is something you can teach a kid, but it's very helpful, and potentially I really love Stanford in terms of the influence of entrepreneurship it gives you. It's more like an environment that coaches you.
Yeah, it's a vibe.
Yeah. Those things I think are still very useful for college, and I don't imagine AI will basically replace a lot of those work. I find the run company as more like a CEO are almost much harder than being a good like investor. And those are probably one of the harder job to automate. And I think those more like disruptive creation job will still be there for the best human to take.
Yeah, that's very well said. So then if we come to the competition, we just finished the topic competition between human and AI. But if we come to the competition between different sovereign, one question would be, do you think China is still lagging behind or is become a significant competitor? And also, how do you see the other sovereign competence in the AI race?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? I think if you look at the quality of AI researchers, the amount of Chinese AI researchers is pretty dominant here, right? It's probably like occupying at least 20%, and I would probably even predict in some field up to like 40%, like Chinese ethnic like researchers. So from that angle, we definitely will have a big impact in the world looking forward, and we are traditionally very good at like math, physics. Not so much at computer science in our age, but in the age that are kids that are 5 to 10 years younger than us, they are also very good at computer science, right? If you think from there by like the amount of total like STEM talents, I would say there is roughly a pretty constant distribution on the amount of genius or the amount of like top 0.01% quantile generation probability out of human distribution. So it's not like if you prepare all the good resources, they will become the top 0.01% quantile. It's more like I think a kind of lottery from your gene and all that, right? And China apparently have a much larger base of like smart people. So I imagine that will continue. But on the other hand, I think US has this great institutional advantage in terms of very vibrant like Silicon Valley culture, very efficient like capital system to funnel money into this. And of course, there is US dollar that is on the foreseeable future still the dominating like money system. So apparently, US will have the pool to suck all the smart talents globally into US to build like global vibrant ecosystem. And in China, I think it's more like local talents based on our current observation. But local talents from China is very strong, right? If you look at DeepSeek, it's very unique. It does not have much people that went to like Stanford, MIT, and all that.
I heard you even got an invitation to join the DeepSeek holding company before, right?
Yeah. I had a kind of tenured professor opportunity after Stanford, and I was like looking, okay, is there any fun things to do if I don't immediately do startup? Talking to them, they want to build this AI lab. So yeah, like we were talking there. I'm impressed that they have the forward-looking thinking at that time to already buy those like 10,000 A100 chips from their like trading money. It's a pretty gigantic investment if you only want to do algo trading, right? Since there's not that much data for you to burn up that many GPUs. So I'm pretty impressed. Of course, yeah, I'm still more interested in doing startup and all that, so I didn't really get involved deeper. But at that time, I had a very strong impression. But when I saw DeepSeek, I was completely blown away by they were able to use local talents from like Tsinghua and Peking to and also a lot of other top places like Zhejiang University to curate a super strong team that is first very humble, second absorbed all the great technical traits of like high frequency trading. They were so good at like optimizing a lot of the detail, like the MLA structure, and they are also extremely good at basically reproducing idea when you, in principle, you know that can work, right? Similar to if I know there is an alpha that potentially make money, I only need to know a signal that, okay, there's a binary bits, that direction will generate money. Then I can let my smart people to like work very hard to mine this idea maybe in a different form. I think DeepSeek is extremely good that when they see OpenAI, which is today's like O1, O3, have a potential possibility of working, they can just use this 1-bit signal to essentially, yeah, like get all the research and reproduce. That's like really amazing traits that you bring from high frequency trading and in general quant trading to like machine learning, to deep learning, and to today's like big model computation.
So it sounds like you're pretty bullish about China's progress, especially after the DeepSeek moment. How about the other sovereign? I think, before the DeepSeek moment, I feel very bearish about most of the nation's national competence in AI. But after DeepSeek, sounds like it become a accessible tooling for every single entrepreneur, etc. So what do you think the other sovereign in this AI race?
I think for model training labs, I don't see that much opportunity to create a open AI or even like I think Mistral level new labs. It's such a capital intensive business. It's pretty much like the old Manhattan Project, right? If you want to do
Yeah.
Manhattan Project, you need an extremely charming top fundraiser plus a group of super strong researcher, and they need to have this network effect of super smart researcher that they attract each other. They build this organization that can have talent flywheel. I I think that's pretty hard to kick off. I can imagine you can kick off something like that in London. Like DeepMind proved that they were able to kick off this, right? And Mistral might be able to have a shot, but in all the other regions, what I observe is the people can probably produce research on par with like more like those big open source academic lab style. For example, like for Middle East, I can see there is strong academic research that launched a bunch of big models like Falcon and all that. but
Yeah.
I do not see that they can have a full-fledged research lab to the scale of like Anthropic or like Grok or like even a Mistral.
Okay, so if that's the case, I imagine basically going forward, the LLM will be still controlled by China or US commercial entity. But how about the application layer? Do you think application layer is going to be a very democratized field? Every single entrepreneur can participate, or it is still like the traditional internet? In the end of the day, it's still the US contribute majority of the application to the world, and then China contribute some of the rest.
I think building applications is technology-wise are pretty easy. I think there will be a lot of those like one person, $1 billion or one person like $100 million companies. I can see that pretty easily. And in the early days, there will probably be only, I think, 100,000 very good companies that have very stellar revenue until they hit, for example, 100 million, like when they basically plateaued on a relatively niche TAM. Before that, I feel like there are so many places that you can automate, right? Essentially, like algo trading is all about automate Wall Street traders, and it's a gigantic business every year. There's like a pretty much 100 billion level P&L made, and now AI is essentially opened 1,000 of algo trading level opportunity. Of course, a lot of them are smaller in terms of GDP, but I can easily see a big chunk of GDP will be replaced by AI. Uh, and for each of those small sector of GDP, there should be a lot of those like very specialized company. I don't think it's gonna be like requiring humongous amount of AI talents like the model training labs. I think it's more like a domain expert and distribution expert. And your last question is harder to predict whether in the end it will be more like a mobile internet. There will be a few very top players that occupy almost all the traffic and all the revenue. If you look back, building a mobile app on iPhone is also pretty easy, right? Today, with all the technology built, it's also like one person you can build a pretty decent like a mobile app.
But in the end, it's still very concentrated landscape.
Yeah. In the end, I think it's a game of distribution. Distribution somehow will kick in and have like a network effect, a brand effect, have a lot of different modes, right? Just like a pretty much launch like a stablecoin is not that hard, but there is only two big stablecoin like USDC, USDT. Launching an exchange is moderately hard, but launching a decentralized exchange is not that crazy hard, but there is not that many, right? Like even when it's free market, like Binance occupy probably more than half of all the non-Korean trading like revenues and all that. So it's kind of in the end still a world that all the resources will concentrate to the top player because their go-to-market cost will get lower and lower. I want to see at this part. I don't know. I want to truly like guess how distribution channel change. If distribution channel changed, for example, human are no longer need to like looking at advertiser channels. Instead, they talk to agents, and all the traffic becomes like agentic traffic where human talk to their personal agent route the traffic out. Then maybe the future landscape will change for consumer side. For enterprise side, I feel like it will actually have in the future there will be much less big SaaS company. There will be a lot of very small end-to-end service delivery company because of the high sales cost problem. I think in the old days the argument that by building a very good technology, you can share the technology building cost among multiple company and serve all of them and have a company like Workday will probably be gone. And lot of companies, it's pretty easy to use like cloud code and whatever to just build your internal tool and like have a kind of internal open source modification version easily. And and enterprise, I think in the end, it's a question of who can take away all the sales cost. If that part of cost can go away, then maybe the world will shape differently. Consumer, I think it's mostly about the like a customer acquisition cost, right? Like whether the way human interact with machine will change, right? If it changed to everyone talk to their AI or they just talk to their phone without even looking at the screen, or if they just talk to their glasses and all that, I think the distribution will change and the top player will reshape.
Makes sense. Sounds like the super individual, sovereign individual, or super, tiny, very productive team is going to emerge instead of, compared to the Constellation or Workday, those type of software holding empire.
Yeah. I fundamentally do not believe in the future, like big, old-fashioned SaaS company, including even like Salesforce.
Yeah, Salesforce become a conglomerate as well.
Yeah. Because in the early days, they are able to distribute one very sticky product, and from there, they are able to like grow and all that. And even today, a lot of my like public stock picking friends are still very bullish on tickers like Salesforce or like let's see ServiceNow. A lot of like people are bullish. I hold a more, I guess, exotic view that I believe a lot of the enterprise thing will be reshaped to the point that software will be written by AI very easily with prompts, so that it's mostly about who have the domain knowledge and who have the data. And potentially the people that own this monopoly position will be more people who have like a great control over data, especially unique data. For example, Databricks might be a good ticker to hold if it's public, because it might potentially become more like the data OS layer of big enterprise. That's the layer that I think is relatively more sticky. Of course, the big hyperscaler like AWS, Google Cloud, and Azure, I would predict it's still gonna be very good business for the next 10 years.
So let's go to the last question. Yeah, so basically I know you grew up in China, but you came to US after the college and they become very adopted to the local community from founders, investors, environment. But when I stay in US, I found that most of the China grew up founders, they are struggling about their self-identity. What is your trick and what kind of advice you're gonna give them, especially in such a geopolitical uncertain environment as of today?
Yeah, I don't think that much about, oh, I'm Chinese. I find I kind of pretty much learned all my business knowledge in Stanford and post Stanford. In Peking, I'm pretty much a very pure mathematician. I only care about, oh, why deep learning works, why quantum field theory, why we cannot find a mathematical foundation for quantum field theory. I'm an extremely pure mathematician. So all my business knowledge I learned when I come to Stanford, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, it seems the deep learning is pretty hard to understand the basic. Why don't I drop out and do a startup? That's kind of what Stanford gives me as a vibe. And of course, I didn't drop out. I stayed in Stanford, but I have been building like say AI community that are for all basically AI researchers globally and AI entrepreneurs globally around Stanford since 2015, right? And in like 2022, we like a few friends of us, we built this AGI house that is kind of like a continuation of a lot of our early endeavor on like basically grouping smart researchers, smart entrepreneurs want to do things in AI altogether, right? So I think for me, I learned all my even pretty much social skills in US.
So go to Stanford is the trick.
Yeah. Probably go to Stanford is a trick. I consider I almost did undergrad in Stanford in terms of startup culture, right? I learned from like Hoffman. I learned from the early like Peter Thiel class, Sam Altman class. I learned from the first batch of Bitcoin class, which like emerged like multiple like unicorn founder on crypto space from the 2015 kind of Bitcoin class by Dembele Balaji. So I feel very lucky that I basically like when a game like where you were born is pretty important, right? I feel like I'm lucky that I'm born
Yes.
in the epic center of all the technology like blow up, both deep learning and like a Bitcoin
That's
and
true.
the crypto industry.
In the end of the day, I think talent is like the wine. The vintage and the location really matters.
Yeah.
So you're very lucky. Like you come from the right vintage. You're doing all the business in the AI age, but also you come up with the right location.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, awesome. Yeah, thank you, Bill, for all of your sharing. It's very insightful, and really appreciate your time. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's a really fun conversation. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Well, that's all for today on Build It Up. We will be back next week with another inspiring guest. Subscribe now so you will never miss our amazing interview. Until next time, this is Bill Chen. Goodbye and take care.